If you take a look at the Rosefield Masons 33rd degree list again, you may recognize some of the other names of Christian ministers: Oral Roberts, Robert Schuller, Norman Vincent Peale. From these people and through the charismatic church, especially the faith movement, a great number of church leaders have been adopted into Freemasonry, the Eastern Star, and the Illuminati. Time will not allow that I expose all these church leaders, but I'll focus on Oral Roberts, because he's one of the main fathers of this massive Masonic church infiltration. Oral Roberts is known as the father of the prosperity gospel, sow a seed theology, and a tedious promoter of the positive confession principles like blab it and grab it, name it, frame it, and claim it, and etc. I've shown in some of my other videos that the false prosperity gospel didn't come out of a vacuum, but originated in the esoteric societies long before the prosperity teachers came out with name it, claim it, and frame it. Or name it, frame it, and claim it. This principle was taught by Charles Emerson and used by the Luciferians, who called it the law of attraction. One of these Luciferians was the 33rd degree Freemason Napoleon Hill, who is known for prosperity books such as Think and Grow Rich, Your Magic Power to Be Rich, The Magic Ladder to Success, and etc. Napoleon Hill practiced witchcraft and necromancy. Every night he practiced spiritual sessions with a group of 9 dead people, whom he called his invisible counselors. These 9 were Emerson, Paine, Edison, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon, Ford, and Carnegie. All of them had been involved with Freemasonry and or directly with the Illuminati. Oral Roberts was deeply inspired by Napoleon Hill's book Think and Grow Rich, and had established a close and long-standing relationship with Napoleon Hill. The book Your Magic Power to Be Rich is a compendium of some of Hill's prosperity books. On page 207 in the foreword to The Magic Ladder of Success, the editor Patricia G. Horan said, "The like of Dale Carnegie, Norman Vincent Peale, and Oral Roberts became devotees and sometimes shared speaking platforms with Napoleon Hill." Unquote. Devotee sharing platform? Let me tell you the truth. Oral Roberts' 1947 prosperity revelation didn't come out of a vacuum. No. And Oral Roberts' 1970 bestseller book Miracle of Seed Phase didn't come out of a vacuum either. Other ministers like the televangelist Robert Tilton blatantly and prolifically copied Hill's principles. The law of compensation in his teaching about seed phase is directly retrieved from Hill. These ideas were adopted by Kennedy Hagin, who, by the way, lived in the same city as Oral Roberts, and spread a long row of faith-moving prosperity preachers like Kennedy Copeland, Ted Haggard, and Joel Osteen, and etc. It came as a shock for many when Fritz Springmeier in 1991 came out with an article claiming that G. Bromley Oxnam and Oral Roberts had been seen by half a dozen of witnesses participating in satanic ritual abuse. In the article, it was stated that there were tunnels under Oral Roberts University which led to secret rooms where this satanic ritual abuse allegedly took place. Even though one witness boldly came forward in a radio interview, the story was never believed by many. It was simply too incredible to be true. However, I read some of Fritz Springmeier's books, and his thorough research is backed up by years, names, places, pictures, dates, and references to precise historical source material that I view him as a very solid source. I mean, Fritz Springmeier was famous already at that time, so why would he lie and jeopardize his reputation? Now, in 2005, Dr. Robert Oxnam, the grandson of G. Bromley Oxnam, was participating in a television interview about his multiple personality disorder, which kind of gave credence to Fritz Springmeier's claim in 1991.
Let me ask you, starting with this, many people don't believe that this is a true disorder, that this is it's just something someone's doing. Could you talk to us a little bit about what multiple personality disorder or dissociated identity is?
But it's interesting that you raised it because people do doubt. And it makes it for those of us who suffer from multiple personality, now called dissociative identity disorder. It's sort of the second abuse that we face to have to defend ourselves. My wife, who has been there throughout all of this, gets ferociously angry at people who doubt it because she's lived with it for 2 decades now. But essentially what MPD or DID is a fracturing of one's identity because of vicious abuse that occurs usually in the first 3 or 4 years of life, before one's identity is completely formed. And it's very understandable, I think, if you think back to that, if you have a combination of acute sexual and physical and emotional abuse, for a child to feel that he or she is just worthless, and therefore to create another identity of a good child who is worth something. And it's an attempt to survive while you still keep the other identity there to be abused. You actually split yourself into 2 parts so that you can, psychically speaking, survive. But abuse is probably the most hidden horror that we face in our society, so people don't talk about it. They certainly don't. And if you sense that you've got a member of a family, if you've got a friend where there's clearly something that either they've said it, that there's been severe abuse, or there's evidence of some kind of response that's going on in the mind that seems like it's a reaction to abuse, don't walk around it. Look at it, because at its worst, these disorders related to abuse can destroy one's sense of purpose and value, and can lead to doing damage to yourself. So
reach out.
Dr. Robert Oxnam told that his multiple personality disorder was due to sexual ritual abuse in the family. If Fritz Springmeier had been fabricating these claims, how could Oxnam's grandson emerge later with the telltale symptoms of satanic ritual abuse? I mean, if you see the fin of a shark, there's probably a shark below, and there's no smoke without a fire, right? Our Roberts University is full of esoteric fingerprints. Let me just show you a few. At the entrance there's a double circle with an inverted triangle which is used in Satanism, and behind is what is supposed to be praying hands, but the hands are not folded and they are not together. No, they are forming a Masonic symbolic gesture, namely a pyramid and the Vesica symbol. Behind the praying hands is a pyramid-shaped entrance to the tower. The reflecting pool is shaped like a pyramid and a phallic symbol, and etc. Jesus said that we should know a false prophet by his fruits. When I was a young student at a Bible school, my favorite gospel singer was Keith Green. He was my favorite because it was not only his message but also his life which bore the fruits which I desired in my own life. Not only was he a great musician, but he practiced Christianity by giving to the poor. In his house lived more than 60 homeless people whom he had found in the streets, and his records were given for free to people who couldn't afford it. Today, I can't even play a church song on my piano without copyright attached. In one of my videos, I played the tune Great Is Thy Faithfulness on my keyboard as background music, and YouTube immediately sent me a message that this tune was copyrighted and should not be used. Didn't Jesus say that we should give it for nothing because we received it for nothing? Can you imagine if all the Psalms in the Bible written by King David were copyrighted and you had to pay money every time you shared God's word or added music to one of David's Psalms? Didn't Paul teach that we should edify each other through spiritual songs and hymns? Today, Christians are exploiting each other through spiritual songs and hymns, right? Sorry, I went off track again. Now, in the spring of 1979, God told Keith Green to go and sing and preach the Bible for the Bible students at Oro. But when Keith Green contacted the Oro management, they said no, even when Keith Green told him that he would do it for free and that he would pay for any expenses attached to the concert. However, God kept on telling Keith Green to go and preach for the Oro students, and after much prayer and fasting, Keith Green went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, but was still denied any performance at Oro. But Keith Green kept on fasting and praying, and after a while the management of Oro finally gave him the green light. During one of his concerts at Oro, and after having preached about sin and righteousness, the Holy Spirit fell on the students. The whole assembly fell on their knees, and many of them came to confess their sins. Among the students was Oral Roberts' oldest son, Ronald David Roberts. His confession is written in Melody Green's book, No Compromise. I'm quoting from the book from page 295. Pretty soon a clean-cut, neatly dressed young guy took the microphone. He was trembling and weeping so much before he spoke that I just knew he was going to say something pretty heavy. He started off slowly, haltingly. You all know who I am. You think I'm one of the most spiritual students on campus. Well, I'm not. I know what you have to say. I know what I have to say may get me kicked out of school, but I believe God wants me to share it anyway. I don't know how to confess this except to just come tight out and say it. I've been involved in homosexuality here on campus, and God has broken my heart tonight. I see how much I've been hurting him, hurting you, hurting the school. I really need God to forgive me. With His help, I'm going to change. Hallelujah, revival had come to Oro. However, Satan and his ministers do not like when Christians repent from sins. The microphone was almost ripped out of Ronnie's hand, and Ronnie was quickly removed out of the room by an Oro management official. And then something strange happened. I'm reading from the book. The change in the atmosphere was so immediate that it was staggering. Something had obviously changed, but it wasn't clear what. There was a tangible sense of a loss of conviction, and nobody else got up to share. The Holy Spirit, it seemed, had been quenched in some way, and there was nothing you could do to whip him up or bring him back. Do I have to tell that Keith Green's ministry at Oro was stopped immediately? 3 years after, on the 10th of June 1982, Ronnie was found dead in his car by an alleged self-inflicted gunshot through the heart. Randy Roberts Potts, Oral Roberts' grandson, who is a homosexual, went public and told how his uncle Richard Roberts ran Oro until 2007, until a scandal of financial fraud and family sex misconduct forced him to resign. By their fruits you will know them. Satanic ritual abuse as well as Freemasonry affects the spirituality of all the family members. A flood of immorality follows in the wake of such practice. And I will come back to that later. If you are a minister of God, you must protect your family. Even the Bible teaches us that a minister who can't lead his family should not be leading the house of God. Job interceded for his sons every day and brought offerings for them. Jesus taught us to pray, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And that us represent first and foremost you and your family. Before you can minister to others, you must minister to your family first. As a man, it's your responsibility to protect your family. Let me tell you the truth. That path will take you through prayer and fasting. Outwardly, Oral Roberts was known to be thundering against homosexuality. Don't be deceived. By their fruits you will know them, not by their words. Oral Roberts' healing ministry became a trendsetter for many faith preachers. Especially Benny Hinn was inspired by Oral Roberts' style. But how could Oral Roberts heal all these people if he was a false prophet? Were the healings fake? Jesus never taught that healing someone or casting out demons was a criteria for righteousness. In Matthew 7, Jesus warned his disciples about people saying, Lord, Lord, doing miracles, who were not recognized by him at the day of judgment. Many people have testified about being healed through Oral Roberts' healing ministry, and I believe a large percentage of the healings were real. However, I also know that Oral Roberts used false testimonies and faith-specific healings to gain popularity. In March 1952 issue of Oral Roberts' magazine Healing Waters featured a cover picture of 3 highly esteemed medical doctors congratulating Oral Roberts. However, when a Presbyterian pastor, Carol R. Steger, addressed an inquiry to the American Medical Association about these doctors' authenticity, he was informed that none of them could be identified as licensed doctors of medicine. Another indication of fakery was when a young lady in a coffin was resurrected from the dead, and the young lady later informed the press that she was a prostitute paid to fake the resurrection. By their fruits you will know them. Fruit recognition is important, and I'll come back to that later. Now, if you are researching Illuminati church infiltration, you will have to look at the leading tele-evangelization networks. After Oral Roberts came Pat Robertson, who founded the CBN in 1960. And then a decade later came Paul Crouch, who founded the TBN, the Trinity Broadcasting Network. This is Pat Robertson on the front page of Time magazine, which was owned by Time Warner until 2014. Notice that Pat Robertson is doing the lion's paw secret hand sign. This is an old hand sign which goes back to ancient Sumerian magic and allegiance to the god Kun. In Satanism, the sign is used to proclaim the birth into Luciferianism, and as far as I know, it is used in Freemasonry too. Here's a picture of the Pharaoh Khufu doing the sign, who, by the way, is famous for building the Great Pyramid. Now, if you take a closer look at the Trinity Broadcasting Network, you will discover some Illuminati fingerprints too. Here's the logo of the leading Illuminati family, the Rothschilds, or Luciferians, and here's the Trinity Broadcasting Network's logo. Is this not Christianity placed within Luciferianism, a symbol of Illuminati's hidden agenda, or is this just made this way by coincidence? Why would the Trinity Broadcasting Network founder Paul Crouch agree to a logo that resembles an Illuminati logo? On a grass field in front of Trinity Broadcasting Network's headquarters, that hidden agenda is emphasized by the statue of a white horse. If Paul Crouch was a genuine Christian, Jesus would be riding the white horse, right? But look who's riding it. Some kind of demon or Satan is riding the white horse, symbolizing who's really running the Trinity Broadcasting Network. Let me tell you the truth. Trinity Broadcasting Network is deeply infiltrated by the Illuminati, and it is no coincidence that the majority of the Trinity Broadcasting Network preachers have been exposed having ties to Freemasonry and the Illuminati. Consequently, it shouldn't surprise anyone that many of these preachers have been exposed being sexually immoral. Illuminati and sexual immorality go hand in hand. Paul Crouch's homosexual immorality have been exposed, not only in the newspapers, but also by family members and by men confessing to have had a sexual relationship with Paul Crouch. Neither is it a coincidence that Trinity Broadcasting Network, just like Oral Roberts and Pat Robertson, is preaching a false prosperity gospel. You will know them on their fruits. Here's a clip from a radio interview with Paul Crouch's granddaughter, Brittany Crouch Cooper, who used to be the Trinity Broadcasting Network Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening. Welcome to Apostasy Alert. I'm your host, Jackie Alnor, and what I'd like to do tonight is play a portion of an interview that I did over the phone with Brittany Cooper, the granddaughter of the founders of the Trinity Broadcasting Network, Jan and Paul Crouch, who is involved in all this litigation back and forth over her trying to bring TBN into some state of accountability. As many of you know, because not only have I talked about it, but it's been in the news for quite a while now, is that Brittany was working at TBN as the chief financial officer and found so many wrong things in the books that she just, had to bring them to account for, and they would have no accountability to her or anyone else. And so, of course, she became their enemy, and they terminated her. And not only did they fire her, but they also fired her father, Paul Crouch Jr., who was almost single-handedly running the network for quite some time because of the feebleness of his father, Paul Crouch. And also, as we're going to find out, even her brother Brandon was let go after Brittany filed her lawsuits against a couple of TBN lawyers that had been working on behalf of TBN to help cover up the dirty business going on behind the scenes. You've heard me speak for so long against the heresies and the evil claims of the prosperity gospel and the abuse and the fleecing of the sheep of God. And I've been talking about those things for so long, and yet for years I've been hearing rumors of some of the most vile wickedness one can imagine against the Crouch family, Jan and Paul and Matthew Crouch as well. And and I haven't reported on that much because I just felt those things had to be confirmed by more than one witness. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Brittany is the second witness of these, to see these events firsthand. The first witness being Kelly Whitmore back in around 2005 when she was the assistant of Jan Crouch, and she came forward with a lot of information that was, quite frankly, so shocking that it came close to being unbelievable that I was concerned about reporting it back then. Even when I wrote my book, The Fleecing of Christianity, I left out all of those rumors of Jan's promiscuity and Paul Crouch's bent towards same-sex attraction and all of these horror stories and the thugs that they would use to intimidate people, all of things like this. I just dealt with what I could see and document on Christian television, as I've been documenting it and taping it for 25 years now. So I didn't want to touch those things, but now that the second witness and even more viable witness has come forward, Brittany Cooper, I think I can freely speak on some of these things because we already know that the Crouch's theology is corrupt. But any time doctrine is false, so is the morality of the people who are proclaiming it. That just seems to be a given. And now we know from her testimony as a second witness that these things are reliable. Until just recently, Brittany was under a court restraining order put on her by TBN not to speak to anybody about them or anything. And then when it lifted, it gave us the opportunity to talk freely. She won't be talking about the details of the court case, but she will speak, as you will hear, just about the interaction in her family and the different things going on behind the scenes. Now, I found Brittany to be intelligent, articulate, and a highly educated woman. She has a master's degree. She's very brave to do what she is doing. And people who have accused her of being after the money, they have nothing to stand on, considering the fact that she was in a very high position at TBN and was positioned to where she could live like the king and queens that they live, but she chose truth rather than to go along with their sin and to be an accomplice to the crime they've done against the body of Christ. So without further ado, here's Brittany.
I'm doing the right thing. Like, this is the right thing to do. And that's why I'm able to continue doing it. You know, despite the rash of lawsuits and all these, flying accusations and, every day being another, sparring match with, my family. So, it's a long road, but I'm definitely in it for the long haul. I'm certainly not doing this to try and, quote unquote, get a big payday. Like, everybody's like, oh, she just wants a payday. And it's like, no, believe me, there are easier things in life to do in order to earn a living. And I'm really doing this to, I think the world needs to know. I really think that, I really feel convicted to tell the truth and to stand up for what's right. TBN has bullied so many people over the past 30 years, and they've gotten away with it because they are scary people. They're terrifying, and they have endless funds to continue their reign of terror, and they've been able to intimidate people and scare them into keeping quiet and spend money on attorney's fees to get them to keep their mouth shut. And unfortunately for them, I'm not easily intimidated, and that's not going to happen.
Who do you see
threaten me?
I'm sorry. Who do you see as the biggest, as the one calling these shots to be intimidating to people? Of your relatives.
Oh gosh. Well, right now I really see it as my Uncle Matt. He's a very vengeful person. And this is personal for him. I quote unquote blew the whistle on many of the illegal things that were happening in regards to his income. Like, for example, his income was not reported on their 990s, and that was one of the things I was bringing up and going, what's going on here? The hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of payments to his for-profit company, which were not properly reported on TBN's 990s and are legally required to do so. So he has it out for me. This is a personal vendetta that he is waging against me, and he and my grandmother have a very interesting relationship, a very close relationship, and so she's supporting him, and there you have it. There's two members of the board of directors of the three, so it's a majority of the board. I also feel like it's TBN's general counsel, John Castoria. He's calling a lot of these shots. I mean, he's their general counsel. If TBN were doing something that were not in the best interest of TBN, it's his job to speak up and say otherwise. And he's not. He's continuing down this road, and the further they go, the more they're going to be exposed, and that's fine with me because that's what I'm trying to do anyway. My grandparents have not spoken to me or really anybody in my family since October. It's very odd, you know. It's like I'm dead to them, and it's at first it was very hurtful, you know, because I was very close to my grandmother, especially when I was in high school and college, and for some reason she just totally cut me out of her life. And you know, I've reached out to her, I've called her, you know, we used to exchange text messages all the time, and you know, I love you, Grandma, and Thanksgiving was definitely very, very hard for me. It was a very emotional day. Just because it was the first Thanksgiving, you know, I haven't had my grandmother's stuffing and just silly stuff like that. And it was devastating, really, you know. And then Christmas came and went, and you know, I was the only person in my family. My grandmother didn't, you know, she bought everybody these personalized Bibles. They're actually very beautiful. But she bought everybody in my family a personalized Bible for Christmas, but I didn't get one. And I sent her a text message on Christmas Day, and I said, I love you so much, Grandma, no matter what. Thank you so much for teaching me about Jesus. And I haven't received any reply. So I stopped trying. I figured, you know, she would contact me when and if she was ever ready. You know, my birthday came and went. I didn't hear anything. It was the first year. 27 years, I didn't receive balloons on my birthday from my grandma.
But can you confirm that Jan and Paul haven't been together as a married couple in quite some time?
I know ever since I was a little girl, they never lived together. So what goes on behind closed doors, you know, I can't really testify to, because I was never around that. But I do know that it was always Grandma had her house and Papa had his house, and that's just the way it was. So, and I never really asked questions. It's just the way it always has been. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. This is the right thing to do. They've been getting away with a lot of things that need to be exposed, that are not only illegal but absolutely unconscionable. And enough is enough. You know, it's just, where does it end? So, you know, if they want to, you know, continue to make threats against me, you know, that's their prerogative. You know, I love them no matter what. I always will. If I saw my grandma tomorrow, I'd run up to her and give her a hug and tell her how much I loved her and I've missed her. So I really hold no grudges. But at the same time, I'm not going to give in to something that is, in my mind, an injustice.
Can you confirm that Matthew Crouch is not Paul Crouch's biological offspring?
I haven't seen paternity test results or anything like that, but I do know, I can say that I have had conversations with my grandmother on more than one occasion when we were out together, having dinner together. In fact, one of the conversations was in her house in Orlando. But, she's admitted to me and others more than once that Matthew is the product of an affair she had with Mr. America in 1954. His name was Dick Dubois.
Do you think that's why she is more partial to Matthew, because of his paternity?
Absolutely. Yes. I think Matthew is, from what she's told me, he's her love child. And that's why he's been able to get away with, so much of this, cutting corners and contract to produce, $1 million movies. There's no way they would have agreed to do that if my dad, with my dad's production company, and he had a production company for a long time that did not do any work for TVN. And she's protecting her love child, for lack of a better word.
Do you think that Paul Sr. knows about this?
No, absolutely not.
You don't think he knows that that's not his true son?
I don't think. If he does, he's in denial about it. My grandparents, they live in their own reality. They kind of make up their own rules, what they want to believe. And so if he was made aware of it at some point, he's completely blocked that out. They're very narcissistic people, obviously. They live in their own reality. They make up their own rules, and clearly for the last 30 years, not even the laws have applied to them. So why wouldn't they make that comparison? There's been nobody there that's been able to or willing to hold them accountable to any sort of standard guidelines for anything they do. So it certainly doesn't surprise me that she would make a statement like that.
How does Jen respond to people who do make fun of her for her crazy wigs and her eyelashes and the way she dresses?
She they're all evil. They're all of the devil, and whatever.
She doesn't see something wrong. She doesn't look in the mirror and say, "Eesh, this isn't a good representation."
I did. I asked that one time. I was having a conversation with my dad. I was just like, "Dad, like, what's the deal? I mean, really, like, it takes her 2 hours to get dressed. Why does she look like that?" And my dad's just kind of like, I don't really know, but and he said, but it's been like a progression. He said, if she would have walked in looking the way she does now, 15 years ago, we all would have gone, oh my gosh, what happened? But it was kind of a slow progression into what it is now, and people will always go, oh, your grandma looks like Tammy Faye, and I'm like going, Tammy Faye looks normal to me. Like, granted, she wore eyeliner and eyelashes, but how do you even compare the two? I mean, it's just
and the way she isn't responsible for the horrible decorations of, like, the Bear Avenue place particularly looks like cheap French brothel. and how do people walk through there with a straight face? I guess it's hard for me to fathom.
I don't know. It's kind of like stepping into an altered universe. It's like you kind of go there to be entertained and to see everything, and then it's like, okay, let's step back into reality again and move on with our lives. But it's it's for show, and it is what it is, I guess. And my brother is actually he's working at a church in Santa Monica right now. As part of the retaliation against me, of course, they fired him, and he and his wife went up to Santa Monica, and they're actually doing great. He's working for a church up there and helping my dad out at the Word Network. And
what was the timing of when they let him go?
Right, like around the same time they let my dad go, probably in October of 2011.
How did he feel?
Everybody was just very confused about everything, and he's hurt. He's hurt because at the end of the day, these people, it's your grandmother and your uncle and your grandfather, and for some reason they won't speak to him, and he's like going, well, like what? Like I don't understand, and none of us really understand, to be honest. It's really sad, and there's no reason for it. We've been blessed with good health and time, and it's definitely time that could be spent together as a family, and for some reason that's not happening.
Yeah. What about this Jesus character at the Holy Land experience? I saw on the behind the scenes. So see, I watched the show. Like I said, you don't.
Yeah.
And she was doing this whole tour behind the scenes, arm in arm with this guy, like snuggling with him through this whole thing. It was like shocking how indiscreet it was. Do you have any insights into that?
Oh, absolutely. It was. It was very bizarre to me because, when I would go revisit my grandmother in Orlando, he was always around. And they would hold hands and walk together, and I witnessed them, snuggling, exchanging kisses, and I'm like going, what in the world? and I asked her about it. I said, Grandma, what are you doing? And she said, oh, I kiss everybody on the lips. And I said, what? She said, yeah, I kiss everybody on the lips. It's not a big deal. It doesn't mean anything. And it's like, I don't know. It made me very, very uncomfortable. I can say that.
What's his name?
His name is Les. And he's actually, it's very sad because, he's got a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful children, and here he is, clearly having an inappropriate relationship with my grandmother. And he doesn't leave her side. It's like she travels somewhere, she takes less with her. Both my grandparents do drink alcohol on a regular basis. My grandfather, unfortunately, has a horrible addiction to alcohol that has really deteriorated his brain. He's just not the person he used to be. He definitely has difficulty remembering things on an hour-to-hour basis, if not day-to-day basis, which made your job there at the company very difficult when he tells you to do something, and the next day he's like, why the heck did you do this? And then you just kind of go, wait a minute, you told me to. And I did not, and it's like, oh my gosh. I really love my grandfather, and I really miss him a lot. I think that he's been so manipulated by my grandmother that he's not mentally sharp, and so he's easily controlled by fear. He's easily manipulated into believing things that maybe not necessarily are true. And regardless of any personal downfalls he may have or things he's struggling with in his life, I really miss him. Like I always felt like I had a special connection to him, and I really love him a lot. And I hope to someday, he at least have a relationship to be his granddaughter again, because he's pretty funny. He tells some really funny stories, and I think that's definitely what I miss the most about being in California. Nothing would make me happier than to see TBN in the hands of somebody who would run it properly and do right by the employees and really make it a wonderful thing, spreading hope and inspiration instead of prosperity gospel, and hopefully, God willing, that'll happen someday. I remember one year I was in personnel, and I fought to have my grandpa. The holiday fell on kind of a funny day where I guess Christmas Day was going to be on Friday, and so Christmas Eve was going to be on Thursday. So I asked my grandfather if it would be okay to allow the employees to have Christmas Eve off as well as a holiday, and he reluctantly agreed eventually, and then my grandma found out about it and was so angry with me, and called my grandfather all upset because TBN would be losing so much money if we gave the employees the day off, and so my grandfather ended up canceling. He granted it as a holiday, and then at the last minute, on December 23rd at 3 p.m. sends an email out to all the employees saying Christmas Eve is canceled as a holiday. You all need to come into the office. And it was just like, oh my gosh. I felt so bad. I wanted to crawl under the table.
That's horrible.
Yeah, and so it's just it's just stuff like that it's just like it wouldn't have really cost them anything. It's a soft cost to give that day off so people can spend time with their families, and of course they ended up taking it away at the last minute. And I don't know, my grandparents just they see employees as a liability. I heard one person put it very I guess honestly and truthfully when he said, Jan treats her dogs better than she does her employees, and to be honest, it's true. I would always joke with my grandma and go, if I could do it all over again, I'd ask God if I could just come back as one of your dogs, because she's feeding them leftover filet mignon and all this other wonderful stuff.
Have you ever thought of telling your grandfather the situation with the Matthew Krause thing? Because believe me, that is the most shocking
I've
thing
tried.
of all.
They have him locked down. I mean, not even my dad can get a hold of him. So, and I'm like going, Dad, please, somebody needs to tell him. And not even my dad can get a hold of my grandfather. So, my grandmother and my uncle have been so surrounded and inaccessible to anybody else in the family. I think to keep him in the dark about a lot of this.
Oh, it seems like he's the biggest sucker. You know what I mean? It just seems that way. Oh.
Very naive. Very naive.
Yeah.
But my grandmother, she really puts it on. She's, oh, honey, I love you, and it's like, I don't know. I was deceived for a long time too. I thought my grandmother was just the most incredible person in the world. And, you know, she doesn't even talk to me anymore, so, you know, I don't know.
Wow.
She's very talented.
Do you think that there will be people that could end up, once this thing all plays out, that could end up in
Well,
in a
I do
criminal?
know that the Orange County District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney have, I guess, deployed a joint task force to, you know, do an investigation. And I have been cooperating with them, and I will continue to cooperate with them as they work through the process to see, you know, what they feel, you know, what crimes have been committed, and to hold, I guess, the responsible parties accountable.
If you just tuned in, that was an interview I was having on the phone last night with Brittany Coper, the granddaughter of Paul and Jan Crouch of the Trinity Broadcasting Network. I apologize for the bad quality of sound. So the telephone was just making a hum or something, and it just couldn't be avoided. But anyway, I would like to summarize what we learned. This was a very shocking testimony. Some of the things we learned was that Paul and Jan have not lived together as a couple in decades, that their relationship on the air is a sham, that Matthew Crouch is the product of adultery and not Paul Crouch's biological son. Jan, still in her old age, is in an adulterous relationship. Paul Sr. is a drunk.
Blog
And
Talk
both
Radio.
Jan and Paul are tyrants as bosses over at TBN. And it was interesting to learn that the U.S. Attorney's Office is investigating for potential criminal action upon not only the Crouches, but also the other relative, John Casoria, possibly, and of course Matthew Crouch, and who knows how far it can spread. All I know is that this is another scandal like we've had so much in the recent past that has turned even the world's view of Christianity into disrepute. I'd like to read a portion of a commentary that was written by a TBN employee who must remain anonymous, or he will lose his job if anyone there at TBN knows that he supports Brittany. He said, God raised Esther up for a specific purpose at a specific time. We all know the story. It is written in the pages of the Bible. But maybe God is doing something now, something similar, something significant, right before our eyes, and we are missing it. Maybe Brittany Crouch Coper is a modern-day Esther. Who else could be brought into the inner circle, see the things no one was meant to see, and told to play the game? But then something happened which nobody expected. She refused to be corrupted. She has sacrificed money, reputation, status, and family to take a stand for what is right. Could it be that God has placed her there for such a time as this? No ministry becomes corrupt overnight. It is a process which takes time. Little decisions, little compromises, and then the slippery slope to decline. During this decline, where have been the mighty men of God? Where have been the prophets? Where have been those that would speak up and stand for what is right? Has everyone been blinded, or have they just winked at what they saw and heard? In his wisdom, God raised up a young woman to say no. Well, is this comparable to the story of Esther? It seems that Esther was trying to save her people, and I think that things have gone too far now, that the enemy seems to have won this battle against Christianity, really, by raising up TBN to this extent in spreading error and in showing Christianity in a false light. And so I'm not as optimistic as that man. I don't see that TBN can be used as a vessel of honor for God's purposes when it has, from the beginning, seems to have been a vessel of dishonor that has been used by the enemy to corrupt even the image of Christianity globally. However, like Esther, Brittany is certainly God's chosen vessel,